It's a science fiction action thriller set in the present day, but it has a lot of futuristic overtones, and it involves time travel in the sense that the good guy and the bad guy are both trying to change history. The pivot of all this action is a girl who has no concept when the film begins of what her life will mean in the future. She's a waitress. She's going to college. She's trying to make ends meet. She has a lot of very common problems. She has no idea that these incredible events will impinge on her life. And then when they do, she has to learn to deal with it. And without giving away too much, basically her existence will have a significant event on all of world history in the future. And there's a tremendous desire for one side to have her removed. So they send back the Terminator to terminate her. She's targeted. And the good guys send back their man, and they can only send one guy. So he's got to go up against the almost impossible odds of trying to stop this machine, which cannot be stopped. Arnold, as Terminator, cannot be stopped.
When you look at any type of franchise, it doesn't really matter what the franchise is. Star Wars, DC, Marvel, MCU, whatever, you name it. Those franchises are great. Well, most of them are. But it's really interesting when you look at the very first film in said franchise. When you look at the original Star Wars, first the Star Wars franchise, or when you look at the first Iron Man film for the MCU, it's really fun to look back at the films that started up these franchises. And the Terminator franchise is a franchise that started as some of the best action sci-fi films of all time with the first two films. And then slowly just became mindless, dumb, and really bad sci-fi action films. But those first two films were really strong and solid. And this franchise would have gotten nowhere without a little film that came in the year 1984 titled The Terminator by James Cameron. Technically, James Cameron's first feature film. I don't know if it's his exact first, but it's one of his first anyway. And today we're going to be talking about how truly perfect this is as a sci-fi film. No, is the characters like Shakespeare or anything? No, is the film a mindless masterpiece of a movie? No, but in terms of a sci-fi film, people kind of glance over how really good this first film is. A lot of people talk about the sequel, T2 Judgment Day, which is a fantastic action film and is better than this first film, but let's not just completely glance over this original Terminator. And today we're going to be talking about why I truly do believe this is a perfect sci-fi film.
That Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop, ever, until you are dead.
Before we get any further with this video, just a couple things I want you guys to note right up front. Number one, if you have not seen this film, there's going to be spoilers for this film, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people, or at least most people, have seen the first Terminator film. And secondly, if you are new to the channel and you like what you see here, please consider clicking that subscribe button and give the video a like. It really does help me out a ton. And comment down below your guys' thoughts on this first Terminator film. Alrighty. Enough dibble-daddle, let's get into it. So really, where do you even start with a film like The Terminator? It's kind of like talking about the original Star Wars film. There's so many iconic and classic moments to talk about, and to be honest, I don't really know where to start when it comes with moments to talk about. And yes, this is the perfect sci-fi film, so I guess I can talk about why I do think it is the perfect sci-fi film. And no, do I think this is a perfect film? No, I think we should get with the problems first. Some of the makeup and effects date don't hold up. The opening of the film, why, for the budget, like $6.4 million was this film's budget, it is pretty impressive. But nowadays, the effects don't really hold up that well. And for the most part, the effects hold up great, but it's not like a T2 Judgment Day or anything, where the effects still hold up today and look better than most of the effects we see today. The effects look great for the time, and especially for the budget, but nowadays they look a tad dated. Also, some of the makeup just doesn't look that great. It doesn't look bad by any means, but it just kind of looks weird, and you can really see the budget in that makeup. Some of the writing is just kind of weird and clumsy. It's not like the writing itself is bad or the delivery is bad. It just kind of feels a bit weird and awkward and stilted. And why most of the performances in this film are great, some of the extras are just kind of weird. I know it's weird to like comment on extras and some actors that aren't even in the film very much, but it just kind of took me out of it a little bit from the film. And also the film kind of has a weird pace to it. It begins with where we can see the future, and then we go back to the past, and it's just a bit weird. And I kind of wish we didn't see the future until we got to that second film. And I understand that James Cameron wanted to hook an audience immediately, and it is a great opening, but I don't know. And the last thing is, this film is extremely 80s. When you watch Terminator 2, for example, that film could have been made 10 years, 15. That film could have been made today. This film just drips 80s, and why it's not bad or anything, I just find it kind of funny. This is definitely a period of the time, especially when you watch those opening credits. You can be like, oh yeah, I forgot, this film was made in the 80s. That's not a bad thing. This is something I thought I would mention, and it's kind of funny watching this film now being like, this film is extremely 80s. And yeah, sometimes Terminator 2 has the moments of being like, oh yeah, this is kind of 90s, but for the most part, it's timeless. This film has a lot of timeless moments, but in terms of the time period, you're not guessing, oh, when is this set? You know exactly that this is set in the 80s. And also, there's some cheap jump scares that just don't really work for me. I know they're in like every horror movie, and we'll talk about that, but just some of the cheap jump scares didn't really work for me. And the relationship between Sarah and Reese, I don't know, it's not bad or anything. They just, in terms of the time span that they knew each other, then they all of a sudden just fall in love. It feels kind of weird and not extremely well done. I'm not saying it's bad. I like the actors and they have good chemistry. I just wish they would have been more like friends and partners instead of like have a romantic relationship. But I understand what James Cameron was going for. He wanted the film to have a bit more stakes. So when Reese eventually does die, you can feel it a bit more. But I liked Reese enough and his relationship with Sarah, and I felt they had a good friendship and like partnerly relationship. So I don't really think they really needed a sexual romantic relationship. But hey, maybe that's just me. Maybe a lot of people really like that. I'm not saying it's bad or anything. It just has some fun moments, and I like their talk when they're in the apartment of like talking about the future of Ben, like, was there anybody he loved? And then he says he always loved Sarah, and that's one of the lines where I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. But other than that, this film was great, and now let's talk about what I love about the film. First off, I talked about some of the visual effects not being extremely up to par, but for the time period and the budget, they looked really good. But nowadays, they kind of like dated. That's just some of the shots. Most of the visual effects in this film look great, especially the end where you actually see the Terminator skeleton. Some of them is very stop motion and stuff, but a lot of it is really cool, and it's a really great design as well, because we didn't actually see what the Terminators looked like. We just know they looked like humans, so we didn't really know what they looked like underneath the human skin and tissue and blood and organs and all the other humans things. So it's really cool to see what the Terminators actually look like. It's a scary design, and you just kind of realize what psycho would like make this face look like that. It's an awesome design and a really great scene, and all the other visual effects look great. Again, some of them don't, but for the budget and time, they look amazing. And let's talk about the action. The action in this film is phenomenal. James Cameron has always had a visual sentiment to him, and he knows how to make an awesome car chase, fist fight, shootout, and there's a lot of car chases in this film and eventually the sequel, and they're great. They're extremely well edited, extremely well paced. You can see what's happening. There's not any moment in time in the action sequences in this film where you're like, who's that? What is that? Did somebody shoot somebody? Did somebody hit a car? It's completely believable, and it feels visceral. a lot of this stuff is done in camera, mostly because CGI wasn't really a thing back then. Like, somebody was dabbling in it, but CGI wasn't a thing really back then, and all of it is done in camera, which I miss that. I miss action films that shoot their action in camera. The stunts are in camera, the crashes and chases and explosions are in camera, and I kind of miss this. Yes, it's more expensive, and yes, it takes more time to set up and actually accomplish, and yes, it's much more risky, but at the end of the day, when you actually watch the film, this film is gonna be much more timeless than a film that uses visual effects. Like, I don't mean to bash on this film, I didn't hate this film, but Terminator Dark Fate, love it or hate it, I thought it was okay. The action, a lot of it has this weird glossy CG look, and apparently a lot of it was done on camera, which you can kind of tell with some of the action and chase scenes, but a lot of it just has this weird glossy look to it. It doesn't look real, and it's eventually it's already looked dated when that came out. And why this film does have some dated visual effects, the actual chases and action sequence in this film look great, especially the finale chase. It's riveting, it's exciting, it's well edited, and it's just perfect. The shootouts are great, all the action sequences in this film are exactly what you wanted. They're riveting, and they're awesome, and there's a lot of it. This film also is extremely well paced. I already talked about some of the pacing moments. The way the film begins is kind of weird, but for the most part, this film has a great rhythm. Action sequence, characters, action sequences, a bit of exposition, action sequence, character, action sequence, character, and then action sequence. This film has a perfect rhythm. There's only really 1 or 2 or 3 scenes between Sarah and Reese, or Sarah and the Doctor, where you have some exposition, but it's a film, especially in a sci-fi film. You have to explain and explore the world, and I think sometimes the exposition gets a bit too heavy, and I think it's much better done in the sequel. But hey, for a first time with this, I think it's great. And also, that just explains, this is like James Cameron, either his first or one of his first features, and this is an awesome, if this is his first feature, this is an awesome way to start. Also, nobody really talks about the script, and yes, the lines, and there's so many iconic lines in this film.
Come with me if you want to live.
I'll be back. Get out. F you, asshole.
And that's what makes the script so memorable, but just the delivery, the lines, and the script is really strong. This film has a great sense of planning to it. Let's talk about the performance. Arnold Schwarzenegger's the T-1000 is perfect. It's a perfect casting choice. You couldn't find a better casting choice. He is perfect as the Terminator, but originally he wasn't gonna be the Terminator because he didn't want to play a emotionless, lifeless robot, even though, no offense Arnold, that's really what you're planning before. But Arnold Schwarzenegger is perfect as the Terminator because, love it or not, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a fun guy, and he seems like a really nice person. He's not the best actor. He's kind of stale and wooden, but playing a robot, he can be stale and wooden, and nobody would complain because it's a machine. It might look like a person, but it doesn't have the mannerism or action of a person, which I really like. And him being this big hunk of a human, he can play this Terminator, and he's really frightening. Yes, a lot of people like him when he's in the Hero and the sequels, which I do like, but a lot of people forget just how scary the Terminator is as a villain. And yes, the metal skull doesn't help, but just when he's in this person, this big guy just chasing after you, and this killing machine will not stop until you're dead. And he's absolutely great as his character, and I couldn't really see anybody else in this role. Linda Hamilton is great as Sarah Connor. Yes, I like her when she's in kind of this warrior gun mode in the sequel, but as this frightened waitress, she does a great job at it. But also, she also helps in the scenes. She's not just this person who's just tagged along and let Reese do all the work. She actually ends up killing the Terminator, which I like. Also, Kyle Reese is a really great character. The performance is great. There's some times where he's a bit too wooden, but I think that's the performance. He's this soldier in this like dead future, in this absolute apocalypse, horrible future of 2029. Okay, but he's great as this character. There's times he's a bit wooden. Yes, and I've already talked about how I don't really like their sexual relationship, but I think he's a great character, and I wouldn't really want to see another actor in this role. This film is just extremely well made. Perfect? No. But what this film is a chase film. but this film has a perfect rhythm. It's not just a dumb chase film. There's a bit of substance. Why the characters aren't like the most emotional deep. There's stuff there. There's ideas that work, and I like it. And I understand why James Cameron decided to show the future. Do I think it would have been better if it was to save to that sequel? Yes, especially because of budget constraints. But to be honest, it does make you feel and actually feel the weight of this future. Reese isn't just talking about it. You can actually see what he's talking about. So when he talks about it, you believe him. And I kind of wish it was a bit up to more of your imagination. And then in the second one, we begin with this awesome action scene. We're like, oh my goodness, Reese was absolutely right. But still, and I think it's a really good and really fun moment. This film is also quite funny. It's not like a comedy or anything. This film is much more of a horror film, which we'll talk about the horror elements in a second. But the film has a lot of really funny moments, and people kind of forget that the first Terminator film is a horror film. Yes, it has some action moments, but the film actually has some really terrifying moments, especially the sequences where the Terminator is just going after all these Sarah Connors and trying to find the right one, and he kills Sarah's friend, Sarah. It's a really terrifying scene, and it's really well done and quite brutal. The film's quite violent, has a lot of really brutal kills, and the actual introduction of the Terminator, when he just rips the guy's heart out, is a pretty awesome introduction. Also, the introduction to Sarah Connor is also really great, showing her in this diner and showing that people don't really like her when the kid puts ice cream in her apron, which is kind of weird, but it's a great introduction. It's a really fun introduction. The film has problems. I'm not going to sit here and say it's 100% perfect, but it's thrilling, and especially the finale, when you think all the budget has been gone with this massive explosion, you think the Terminator is dead, and he just comes back in the robot. It makes the reveal that much more exciting, because you think the filmmakers have just ran over a budget, but they used every single penny in budget, and I just love the finale. Sure, it might have the syndrome, or the villain won't die. He gets exploded, he gets blown up, and then he keeps on coming, but it just makes the finale super riveting, and I absolutely love the ending and the last line. It really gets you pumped up for the future of these films, which, to be honest, James Cameron didn't really know that there was going to be another one. He waited a long time to make the second one, because this film was a really risky film. The most expensive film of that year was Rambo with a $60 million budget, and this only had a 6.4, and this film has better action than Rambo 3, much more better characters, much more memorable lines. I'm not saying I hate Rambo 3. This film just understood how to make a good sci-fi film, because it's not trying to be Citizen Kane, it's not trying to be Shakespearean, it's just knows what it needs to be, have great action sequences, build the world a little bit, have fun, likable characters, and give them some depth, but not try so hard where you feel like you're trying. Some moments feel like that, but it's hit or miss. This film is indeed great. I extremely enjoyed watching this film. Is it perfect? No. It's very dated at a lot of points, especially those opening credits. But come on. It's an iconic film, and without this film, we wouldn't have gotten the much more superior sequel, T2 Judgment Day, which I will be talking about in a later video, so stay tuned for that. So those are my thoughts on the first Terminator film. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please let me know your guys' thoughts on this film down in the comment section below. And please consider clicking that subscribe button for more movie content. And you guys can also check my podcast I do every other Tuesday with a friend of mine. It's called Movie View Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching, and keep talking movies.